This woman was worshipped as a literal goddess. Her face was stamped on the money of an empire. They named entire cities after her, and a religious cult built around her would last for centuries. To the world, Queen Arsinoe, too, was a symbol of pure power, a woman who ruled Egypt with her brother husband, projecting an image of total strength. But behind the golden mask of ancient Egypt, her life was an absolute nightmare. This is a story of desperation, a brutal chess game where daughters were pawns, brothers were enemies, and marriage was a weapon, and it includes shocking claims of unimaginable abuse by her own father, the king. So how does someone who went through that kind of trauma not only survive but climb to the absolute top of the world? And what happens when a survivor's strategy for enduring horror becomes the official policy for an entire empire? The life of Arsinoe II isn't just old history. It's a crazy look at how personal trauma can reshape a civilization, leaving a dark legacy that would last for generations. To get this, you have to understand the world she was born into was pure chaos. The year is 316 BCE. Just 7 years earlier, Alexander the Great, the guy who conquered the entire known world, died. His massive empire wasn't left to a clear heir. It was left to his strongest generals. What happened next was basically a decades-long battle royale known as the Wars of the Successors. These guys were brilliant, ambitious, and completely ruthless. They carved up the world like a pizza, and one of the most cunning among them was Arsinoe's own father, Ptolemy. Ptolemy was one of Alexander's top guys, and some people whispered he was even his secret half-brother. He was a smart, cautious dude who, instead of trying to grab the whole empire, went for the biggest prize, Egypt. With its insane wealth and natural defenses, Egypt was the jewel of the world. Ptolemy seized it, called himself pharaoh, and started a dynasty that would have his name on it for the next 300 years. He was now Ptolemy I, the savior. But being a king back then wasn't a sure thing. You had to defend it 24/7, not just from other kings, but from your own family. For guys like Ptolemy, family wasn't comfort. It was a list of assets and liabilities. Sons were either heirs or rivals. Daughters were just bargaining chips, married off to create alliances that could break at any second. This is the world Arsinoe was born into. She wasn't just a princess. She was a strategic piece in a game, and her value was all about securing her dad's power. She grew up in the brand new capital of Alexandria, a city dripping in wealth. But all that polished marble hid a deep paranoia. In this world, loyalty could be bought, and betrayal was how you paid for things. From day one, Arsinoe learned the most important lesson. Power is the only thing that matters, and feelings were a weakness that would get you killed. And this is where the story gets incredibly dark. The official histories tell us about her political marriages and her climb to power. But some modern theories tell a much darker story, one that starts with horrific trauma. These accounts claim that Arsinoe's life as a human pawn began not with her first husband, but with her own father, Ptolemy I. They claim she was a victim of incestuous abuse, forced into a sexual relationship with the one man who was supposed to protect her. According to this theory, her father's obsession with power became so twisted that he saw his own daughter as his possession in the most violating way you can imagine. It's a truly horrifying idea. A young princess trapped in a palace, her entire life and body controlled by her father, her king, and maybe her abuser. This narrative suggests this trauma was the single event that defined her life, teaching her in the cruelest way possible that survival meant crushing your own morality. Now, I have to be 100% clear with you guys. This is a huge claim, and it is not supported by direct evidence from mainstream historical sources. Ancient writers who loved gossip and writing about scandals are completely silent on this. There are no surviving texts from the time that say, Ptolemy I abused or married his daughter Arsinoe. This idea is a modern theory trying to explain her later, shocking choices and the tradition of incest that her family became famous for. But as a historical fact, the allegation is unproven. We just don't have proof. What we do have, however, is the undeniable proof of the brutal and transactional life she was forced into, starting with her very first marriage. Whether the darkest rumors are true or not, Her life was about to become a public game of politics, where her happiness and safety were never part of the deal. Around 300 BCE, when Arsinoe was a teenager, probably 15 or 16 years old, her dad made his first big move with her. He married her off to a guy literally old enough to be her grandfather, Lysimachus, another one of Alexander's powerhouse generals. This dude was a tough, grizzled warlord king. The marriage was a classic power play, an alliance to team up against another rival king. For Arsinoe, this meant getting shipped from the fancy city of Alexandria to a rough military court. She was a queen now, but a junior one. Lysimachus already had other wives, and more importantly, a son and heir named Agathocles. Arsinoe's mission was clear: produce sons for Lysimachus and lock down the alliance. And she did it, giving him 3 sons: Ptolemy, Lysimachus, and Philip. But a royal court back then was a snake pit, and Arsinoe proved she was a master of the game. She was not going to be a passive queen. She was smart, ambitious, and ready to secure a future for her own kids. This put her in direct conflict with the king's original heir, Agathocles. The history is a little murky, but it sounds like a season of reality TV on steroids. There were even rumors that Arsinoe tried to seduce her stepson, and when he said no, she turned her husband against him. Whatever happened behind the scenes, the result was brutal. Arsinoe managed to convince her ancient husband that his own son was plotting against him. In 282 BCE, Lysimachus had his son Agathocles executed. It was a shocking move that rocked the ancient world. With one single cold-blooded play, Arsinoe had eliminated her biggest rival and cleared the path for her own sons to become kings. She had learned the rules of her father's world, but in winning she had also made her husband's kingdom unstable. Her ruthless victory had just planted the seeds for her own destruction. Arsinoe's victory didn't last long. The execution of the heir created an opening for their enemies. A rival king, Seleucus, saw his chance and invaded. In 281 BCE, her husband Lysimachus was killed in battle. Just like that, Arsinoe's entire world collapsed. She was no longer a queen but a widow in enemy territory. Her husband was dead, his army was gone, and her son's inheritance was wiped out. She fled to a fortified city with her children, preparing for the worst. It was in this moment of weakness that a new person entered her life, a man who was both family and a deadly enemy, her own half-brother, Ptolemy Ceraunus. Ceraunus, whose name literally meant thunderbolt, was the exiled oldest son of Ptolemy the Firm. This guy was pure violence and ambition, and he was furious that he'd been passed over for the throne of Egypt. Ceraunus had been hanging out in Lysimachus's court, and in a crazy plot twist, he murdered their rival Seleucus and seized the Macedonian throne for himself. Now this violent, unpredictable man was outside Arsinoe's city gates. He was the new king, and she was the widow of the old one. Ceraunus made her an offer that was both a lifeline and a trap. He proposed marriage. He said he would marry his half-sister, adopt her sons, and make them his heirs. For him, marrying her would make his claim to the throne look legit. For Arsinoe, it must have been an impossible choice. She did not trust him at all, but she had to be realistic. She couldn't fight him forever. Believing it was the only way to protect her children, she agreed. She demanded a public wedding, hoping the ceremony would keep her safe. It was the biggest mistake of her life. Arsinoe opened the gates and married her half-brother. But the second Ceraunus was in control of the city, he showed his true colors. He never planned to keep his promise. His only goal was to eliminate any rivals. He ordered his men to kill Arsinoe's children. Ancient writers give horrifying descriptions of what happened next. The historian Justin tells us her 2 younger sons were murdered right in front of her. While the detail of them dying in her arms might be a dramatic addition, the horror is real. Her children were murdered on the orders of her new husband, her own brother. Her oldest son somehow managed to escape. Arsinoe herself was stripped of her titles and exiled, forced to run for her life after losing everything she had ever schemed for. Broken, exiled, and completely alone, Arsinoe hid out on the island of Samothrace. She had gone from being the queen of a massive kingdom to a fugitive with nothing but her name and a burning need for revenge. While in exile, she got news that her psycho husband, Ptolemy Ceraunus, had been killed in battle. But this was no comfort. Her sons were dead, her kingdom was gone, and she had no future. So she did the only thing she could. She went home. She made her way back to Alexandria, the city where she was born. But Egypt was different. Her father was dead. The new pharaoh was her younger, full-blooded brother, Ptolemy II. When Arsinoe returned, Ptolemy II was already married to another woman, also named Arsinoe, because this story isn't confusing enough. This was Arsinoe I. Our Arsinoe II, didn't show up at court begging. She showed up like a hurricane. She was older, way more experienced, and 1,000 times more clever than her brother's current wife. Ancient sources suggest she was the one who engineered her rival's takedown. Soon after she got there, Arsinoe was accused of plotting to kill Ptolemy II. Was the plot real, or did Arsinoe II just make it up? We'll never know, but the result was the same. Arsinoe was exiled, conveniently out of the way. With the queen's throne now open, Arsinoe II made her final, most insane and most shocking move of all. She married her own brother. Around 273 BCE, Ptolemy II and Arsinoe II, full-blooded siblings, became husband and wife. In the Greek world, this was unthinkable. It was incest, a massive taboo. But Arsinoe and Ptolemy weren't just Greek, they were the pharaohs of Egypt. And they had a plan to justify the unjustifiable. The marriage of Ptolemy II and Arsinoe II sent shockwaves across the world. It was a complete violation of Greek custom. One poet who dared to make fun of them was reportedly sealed in a lead jar and thrown into the sea. The message was crystal clear. You do not question the rulers of Egypt. But to make their marriage legit, they needed more than just fear. They needed a divine excuse. They found it in the traditions of their new kingdom. They styled their marriage after the Egyptian gods Isis and her brother-husband Osiris. They also pointed to the Greek gods, specifically Zeus and his sister Hera, the king and queen of Olympus. By doing this, they were turning a shocking scandal into a holy union. They even took on the royal title Philadelphus, which means sibling-loving, turning what everyone saw as a disgrace into a badge of honor. It's important to know that while this set a new rule for their family, the idea that all Egyptian pharaohs married their sisters is an exaggeration. For Arsinoe and Ptolemy II, it was a genius political move to lock down their power and create a vibe of being literal gods. And it absolutely worked. Arsinoe was not just a queen. She became a co-ruler in every way. She shared all of her brother's titles, and some evidence suggests she might have even been given the official title King of Upper and Lower Egypt, making her a pharaoh in her own right. While we can't prove that specific title, her power was undeniable. Her face was put on coins, sometimes all by herself. She was a huge supporter of the arts, played a key role in foreign policy, and was a major reason Egypt won the First Syrian War. She was deified and worshipped as a living goddess. From the absolute ashes of her life as a pawn and a fugitive, Arsinoe II had risen to become one of the most powerful women in the entire ancient world. If you think this story is insane, you have to subscribe right now because we are diving into the craziest people in history every single week. Smash that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next. Arsinoe II died around 270 BCE at the absolute peak of her power. Her journey was unbelievable. She transformed herself from a political pawn, a victim of betrayal and unimaginable loss, into a living goddess and a de facto pharaoh. Was she a ruthless villain or a survivor who just learned to play the brutal game she was forced into? The truth is probably a complicated and crazy mix of both. She was a product of a violent world, and she mastered its rules to make sure she would never be a victim again. We have to remember that the most horrific claim at the center of her story, the abuse by her father, is unproven, a dark shadow in history. What is documented is a life of constant danger, strategic marriages, and the cold-blooded murder of her children. Her ultimate response, marrying her own brother and declaring their union divine, was a masterstroke of political genius. It secured her power, made her a god, and set a new, dangerous standard for the dynasty she helped build. This policy of sibling marriage would become the signature move of the Ptolemies. While it might have worked to keep power in the family at first, over generations, it led to insane cycles of family fighting, assassinations, and chaos. Arsinoe didn't single-handedly cause the fall of her dynasty hundreds of years later with Cleopatra, but she 100% created a tradition that had massive and lasting consequences. The story of Arsinoe II is a wild reminder that power often comes at a terrifying price. She was a woman who endured trauma and turned it into a fearsome strength. But in doing so, she locked in a practice that would echo through her family, a poisoned legacy of incest and bloodshed that began as one woman's desperate, brilliant, and terrifying strategy for survival.